Okay, imagine this. A major country denying something for months, pretty strongly too, and then suddenly they admit to some serious losses in like a really short military clash.
Yeah.
That's kind of the situation we're diving into today.
Exactly. We're looking at recent India-Pakistan stuff, specifically a flare-up between May 7th and 10th. Short, but intense.
Yeah, and we'll be digging into, official statements, diplomatic calls, some pretty surprising admissions that have come out from sources we've seen. The goal is really to figure out what actually went down, and maybe more importantly, what does it all signal for, the bigger geopolitical picture?
Right. We want to cut through the usual noise, pull out the key bits of info, and maybe help you connect the dots. See those aha moments. It might even shift how you see this whole very complex dynamic. We'll look at how narratives change, why certain things get revealed when they do, and the ripple effects globally.
Okay, so let's start with the denials. For quite a while, India was pretty firm, right? No major losses in that air engagement.
Absolutely. Total denial for a significant period.
So what broke the dam? What changed?
Well, the big moment was July 1st. Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was in the U.S. for a Quad meeting, U.S., Australia, Japan, India.
Right, the Quad.
And during a discussion at a think tank, someone asked him a question and he just, admitted it. He specifically said 3 Indian Rafale jets were shot down by the Pakistan Air Force, the PAF, on the night of May 7th.
Wow, not vague at all, just boom, 3 Rafales down.
Pretty direct, a huge shift from their previous position.
Okay, that's already major. But then Jaishankar added another layer, talking about a phone call between U.S. Vice President Vance and Prime Minister Modi.
Yeah, this was apparently on the night of May 9th, so 2 days after the Rafales were down. According to Jaishankar's account, Vance called Modi with a pretty serious warning.
A warning? What kind of warning?
He basically said, look, India needs to accept certain conditions or else Pakistan is prepping a very big attack. That's the quote. Very big attack.
Okay, high stakes. How did Modi reportedly react?
Defiantly, it seems. Jaishankar said Modi told Vance he wasn't concerned, wasn't worried, and India would absolutely hit back if attacked. Basically, stand down, we're ready.
And then comes this part I find really intriguing. Jaishankar's comment about fairness.
Yes. He apparently said, with great innocence, quote unquote, that it was just unfair for Pakistan to, threaten them 2 days after India had already lost those 3 jets on May 7th.
Unfair.
Yeah.
That phrasing seems loaded, especially given the timeline.
It really is. Because claiming unfairness after taking losses prompts the question, what happened on May 7th, the night the jets went down?
Exactly. What do the sources say about India's actions that night?
Well, this is where Jaishankar's unfairness claim gets really interesting. The sources detail that on that same night, May 7th, India had actually launched attacks inside Pakistan, near Muridke and Bahawalpur.
Attacks inside Pakistan. Okay, were these small scale?
Doesn't sound like it. They apparently hit between 4 and 9 different locations, including some in Kashmir, and tragically resulted in at least 36 deaths.
36 people. And India's justification.
They claimed these were terrorist hideouts. Standard justification, perhaps. But the source we're looking at describes it much more starkly, calls it a declaration of war.
Wow. So let's put this together. India attacks multiple sites in Pakistan on May 7th, loses 3 Rafales in the ensuing engagement, and then days later, their foreign minister calls subsequent Pakistani threats unfair.
Precisely. The contrast is, striking. It really highlights how narratives get spun, doesn't it? Trying to frame things differently after the fact.
It definitely shows how complex this is, moving from maybe an offensive posture to claiming victimhood within days.
It's a classic case study in narrative management during conflict, when the facts on the ground don't quite match the initial story.
And Jaishankar's admission in July, that wasn't actually the first sign that the official story was cracking, was it? Weren't there earlier hints?
No, you're right. There were earlier signs. Back on May 31st, India's Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan, spoke at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore.
Okay, what did he say?
It was more indirect, but he did acknowledge Indian fighter jets were shot down. He said they were shot down in aerial combat, and importantly, that many lessons were learned from that May 7th fight with the PAF.
Many lessons learned.
Yeah.
That's usually code for things didn't go as planned, right? Did he give specifics, numbers?
No, he was cagey about the numbers. Interestingly, the sources suggest he even tried to sort of shift the focus or maybe even blame.
How so?
By mentioning Dassault, the company that makes the Rafale, implying maybe there was an issue with the planes themselves. He said the key wasn't if they were shot down, but why they were shot down.
trying to deflect. But was anyone else in India talking more openly before that?
Yes, and this is important context. Just the day before Chauhan spoke, so May 30th, a senior figure in the ruling BJP party, Subramanian Swamy, had actually gone public. Swamy stated quite clearly that Pakistan had shot down 5 Indian jets. Not just Rafales, but also Su-30s and Mirage aircraft.
5 jets. So Swamy put a number out there even before the Chief of Defense Staff spoke and way before Jaishankar's confirmation of 3 Rafales.
Exactly. That was a significant crack in the official silence. It made Jaishankar's later, more specific admission seem less like it came out of nowhere.
Okay, so the narrative was already fraying internally. Let's go back to that Quad meeting where Jaishankar admitted the losses. He was also pushing India's line on terrorism there, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He doubled down on India's long-held position. You know, the line about victims and perpetrators of terrorism should never be equated. He was asserting India's right to defend itself and clearly expected the Quad partners, the U.S., Australia, Japan, to back India's view on Pakistan. He wanted their support on that narrative.
So they issue a joint statement after the meeting. What did it say? Did it back India's position?
Well, it was nuanced. The statement did condemn an earlier incident, the Pahalgam attack on April 22nd, where 26 Indian tourists were killed. It called for justice.
Okay, so some condemnation.
Yes, but, and this is the key point, the statement did not name Pakistan. It didn't hold Pakistan responsible for Pahalgam, even though India was clearly pushing for that.
That's a really interesting omission, isn't it? Especially at a forum like the Quad, with India making a strong case. Why do you think they held back?
The source offers a possible explanation. It points to a meeting on June 18th, about 2 weeks before the Quad meeting.
Okay.
A lunch meeting between Pakistan's army chief, Asif Munir, and U.S. President Donald Trump.
Munir and Trump.
Yeah. The suggestion is that this meeting kind of put Pakistan back in a slightly better light internationally, maybe gave them a bit more leverage, and that might have influenced the Quad to adopt a more neutral tone, maybe not wanting to fully alienate Pakistan right then. A bit of diplomatic balancing.
Which would likely have been seen as a setback for India's diplomatic push at that meeting.
You have to assume so, yes.
Okay, let's shift to another diplomatic front.
Sure.
The SKO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. There was a meeting in China in late June.
Yes, June 26th in Chengdu, Defense and Security Ministers meeting.
And what came out of that? Anything relevant to this?
Actually, yes. The joint declaration from that SCO meeting included something new. For the first time, it specifically demanded that terrorism in Balochistan be addressed.
Balochistan mentioned specifically in an SCO declaration. That's notable. How did India react?
India refused to sign the declaration.
Refused. Why?
Because, according to the source, the declaration didn't include the Pahalgam incident, which India wanted in there. But the other 9 members, including heavyweights like China and Russia, didn't agree to include it. So India was the odd one out.
So another instance where India couldn't get its specific terrorism narrative included in a major international statement, while another conflict zone, Balochistan, was mentioned.
Exactly. It looks like another diplomatic, well, maybe defeat isn't the right word, but certainly not the outcome India wanted.
Taking all this together, the admissions, the diplomatic statements, the omissions, what's the bigger picture conclusion the source draws?
The source suggests that India's long-standing narrative painting Pakistan as the sole source of regional terrorism is maybe losing traction internationally. It's being questioned more.
How so? What are people questioning?
Well, people are apparently starting to look more closely at the constant daily attacks happening inside Pakistan, especially during June in places like Waziristan and Balochistan. Suicide bombings, terrorist attacks.
And connecting those dots.
Yeah, wondering, okay, groups like the Baloch Liberation Army, the BLA or the BLLF are visible, but who might they be working with? Who are the international backers, the forces behind them?
So a shift from just accepting one narrative to asking more questions about the different actors involved.
It seems so. The idea that everything bad happening in Kashmir, for example, is purely down to Pakistan. That narrative seems to be, let's say, losing some of its influencing power on the global stage.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. It really feels like we've seen how one key admission, Jaishankar's confirmation about the Rafales, sort of opened the floodgates. It exposed all these underlying layers, the diplomatic jostling, the way narratives are built, and then crumble, and how international views can shift.
Absolutely. From the direct talk about jet losses to the very careful or maybe revealing wording in international statements, it's clear this whole India-Pakistan story is constantly evolving. It's not static at all.
So as we finish this deep dive, Here's something to think about, maybe for you listening. In this age where we're just flooded with information, how vital is it to look beyond the headlines, to ask why certain things are revealed when they are,
Mm.
and, who actually benefits from controlling that story?
What part of this whole sequence stood out most to you? The military admission,
Mhm.
the diplomatic language, the claims of unfairness,
Mm.
and how might thinking about that change how you look at other complex geopolitical situations around the world? Something to definitely chew on.